Today I'm going to teach you all how we make the pineapple upside down cake in the cast iron skillet. When it comes to making the pineapple upside down cake, in this case today, we are going to be using some box cake mix and some simple ingredients to make it our own. We utilize two different sizes of cast iron skillets in my classroom. We utilize a 10-inch skillet, which is approximately the size of the large burner on the oven. One entire box of cake mix is too much mix for one of these pans. So if the 10-inch skillet is what you have at home, then I recommend putting about 3/4 of your batter into that pan and maybe making about 3 or 4 cupcakes or a very small cake. Today, I'm going to utilize the entire recipe, and I'm going to do mine in the 12-inch cast iron skillet. So I have already mise en placed by cleaning and sanitizing my hands. I cleaned and sanitized my station, and I also have my oven preheated for about 30 minutes to make sure that it is good and preheated. In my pan, I put 1 entire stick of butter. In this case, I am using margarine because that's what I had in the classroom, but I would recommend real butter for better flavor and better quality. After I melt an entire stick of butter in a warm pan, I don't fry the butter. I don't preheat it on high like when I'm browning chicken. I just preheated it over low until my pan was warm enough to melt the margarine. Then I'm going to add 1 cup of brown sugar. In this case, I am using light brown sugar, but dark brown sugar will also work for this recipe as well. If you would like a little bit more or a little bit less of the brown sugar, then that's fine. I'm going to take my whisk and move my brown sugar around in my pan to dissolve it out in the butter. My brown sugar was hard and I softened it up in the microwave, but it is definitely taking just a moment to dissolve. To my topping filling, I am also going to add 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Again, the cinnamon is for flavor. This is optional. You could add a little bit more or a little bit less to your mixture. I typically use about 1 teaspoon. So I'm going to mix that in my pan. It's really important that you don't cook this mixture together. I have had students that cooked it together, and essentially what you create in the bottom of your pan is caramel. And when you cook the brown sugar and the butter together, now you have caramel, and it is going to set up in the oven and be very hard to get out, in addition to the fact that your cake is going to stick. So I just want to mix these two things together until it's just kind of smooth and kind of blended. My next step is going to be to put my pineapple in my toppings. So I want to actually save my pineapple juice because I'm going to utilize that later. And it turned out to be a perfect amount. I'm using pineapple chunks because that is what they had at the store. Crushed pineapple works okay as well. Personally, the pineapple rings are going to be the best. Just wasn't an option for me. So I'm just going to kind of spread these around in the bottom of the pan as best as I can. Because I am using the chunks and not the rings, I'm actually going to spread them around to the edge because the center of my cake is what it has a tendency to cook last, and the pineapple being a wet feature, I want the pineapple to be more on the outside so that the center will cook a little bit better. So now I just have the pineapples, brown sugar, butter, and cinnamon here on the bottom of my pan. In my stand mixer bowl, I'm going to add yellow cake mix. White works fine too. When you go to the store, they do sell a pineapple upside down cake mix, but it has fake pineapple flavor in it and it's just gross. So get the regular plain vanilla, add this to the pan. The recipe calls for 1/2 cup of oil. I'm using regular vegetable oil. You can also melt a stick of butter or a stick of margarine. And the recipe calls for 1 cup of water. And in this case, to get the pineapple flavor, I'm going to add the cup of pineapple juice. And I got exactly 1 cup. Sometimes out of the rings, I might get about 3/4 cup of water or of pineapple juice. And in that case, then I do go ahead and fill it with water till I get 1 cup of liquid. When I buy my pineapple, I always buy the pineapple in juice and not in oil. Or not in heavy syrup, I guess. Pineapple would come in heavy syrup. And then next it's going to call for 3 eggs. In this case I have medium-sized eggs. Usually I use large eggs, but we're using what we have. Crack them, I like to use a plate. Crack them in a side bowl. And this way, when I crack them into a side bowl, I can see if there's anything wrong with them. Also, something that we learn in the classroom, something else that we learn in the classroom is by cracking them on a flat surface instead of on the sharp edge of the bowl, we are less likely to get the shells in them. So I do recommend using a flat, sometimes I'll just use a table. In this case, I use the plate. The plate is good, particularly for people that are just getting used to cracking them on the flat because they might smash them and then you don't contaminate your table. So now I have 3 eggs. And for mixing methods, cake mix is referred to as what's called a dump method. And essentially you put everything in the bowl, you turn it on, and then you spin it. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on my stand mixer and mix it. So now I have mixed my cake batter together. And when you make a cake out of a box, they are designed, usually, make sure you follow the directions, they are designed to actually go for a couple of minutes, and it whips a little bit of air. When you're baking from scratch, as we learned in the baking unit with flour, sometimes you have to be careful about your mixing, but cake mixes generally have the instructions on there that you want to mix it for a couple of minutes. While my cake was mixing, I did mise en place my station. I went ahead and put my dishes into the dishwasher. I got rid of my trash. I put away ingredients that I was done with, and I kept myself mentally focused. My pan, which is pre-prepped here with my pineapple. So my cake batter is going to be poured right over the top. And I like to do this from the center and then just let it spread. Using a rubber spatula or a bowl scraper to make sure that I scrape it. And I'm also not going to lick my bowl or any of my utensils. Partially, I'm in a commercial kitchen and that would be unprofessional, and I would put myself at risk for salmonella. So remember, raw egg product, you are putting yourself at risk for foodborne pathogens, and so you want to make sure that you are not licking anything that has raw ingredients in it. I'm just very lightly going to spread that. I'm not trying to disrupt the pineapple underneath it. Just want to make sure I get around. As it bakes, it's going to come up and around, and so if your cake batter doesn't cover all of the edges, it's okay. What actually happens as it cooks in the cast iron skillet, it allows the butter and the brown sugar to kind of come up, and it creates like a kind of fried, or not really a crispy edge, but it creates this kind of more golden brown edge, just a little extra. I'm going to put this on the center rack of the preheated oven. and I'm going to set a timer. Because I'm cooking in this pan, what the box says is not always accurate. I generally set my timer for about 20 to 25 minutes, and then I check it very often. The cast iron skillet is going to stay hotter than a cake pan, and it can easily overcook my cake. So I want to keep a watch on it, and when I can just jiggle the handle and the center just begins to set, and the center just begins to kind of puff up in the center, that's when I want to pull it out. And then I'll show you what that looks like when I pull it out of the oven. My pan has cooled to the point that I can touch it. I want to make sure I loosen the sides, which will prevent my cake from breaking as I pop it out. I have a clean and sanitized sheet pan. I'm going to pick it up with both hands. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to pull it down really hard. Because I did not use the sliced pineapples, sometimes it doesn't come out as much. I feel like they kind of pop the cake out. So hopefully it will have all popped out. Looks pretty good. And again, the pineapple chunks are not quite as pretty as the slices of pineapple on the bottom. You can use 2 cans of the pineapple if you like, and do it that way, or pretty much 1 can of the rings does an entire one. So it all came out of the pan pretty good. I got a little bit stuck in there, but all in all, it looks pretty good. So I'm going to let this cool for about another 10 or 20 minutes or so, and then I will cover it completely. I do want to make sure that it's cooled well, and then generally I store this in covered really well with the wrap, and I will store it overnight in the commercial oven, or in a speed rack works well too. You don't really want, usually about 2 days. So tomorrow it will taste different, and it will taste better tomorrow. And so it's one of those products that I do recommend making 1 day in advance if you can. 2 days in advance is okay, but at that point you do start to get a little bit of deterioration in the quality of your pineapple upside down cake. Some people do like to use the cherries with the pineapple. I don't. That's just a personal preference. And so usually I just do the straight rings with the brown sugar and the cinnamon and the butter on the bottom. It makes a nice coloring when you do the pineapple upside down cake. The pineapple juice in the cake helps flavor the cake, and in the cast iron skillet puts a really nice little ring around the outside of it. So after this is cooled completely, I will cut it. Usually I cut it into about 6 slices, maybe 8 for this size of a pan, and go with about 8 servings on that.